This is going to be a ridiculously huge list. You'll have to bear with me if I'm quite quick on some of them because I don't want to take too much of your time. The 10% off is still live on our website if you want to save yourself some money when you buy your eShop credit. All the information about that is in the description. There are a lot of very obvious big name sales that you should get if you haven't already. Things like Hades, which is 50% off, and the wonderful Super Meat Boy. They kind of go without saying, but you hear about those all the time. I want to fill this with some real indie gems because that's kind of the point of this sale, and I'm not saying those aren't indie gems, you've heard of Hades, right? With that said, congratulations to the winner of the free game this week. Your name is on the screen right now. What are the best games on sale? Well, my name's Mark Walker. Welcome back to SwitchUp. Hit all the buttons if you want to. Now, let's find out. First up then, we've got Mato Anomalies from Arrowwiz Games. This felt a little bit like Persona in some ways, and had a dual protagonist system, where one essentially operated as a detective in the real world, while the other was like a dimension-hopping ninja. It's set within a neo-futuristic version of old Shanghai, and playing as Do and Graham, you have to investigate anomalies around the city. There is a full review on SwitchUp of this if you're interested in finding out exactly how all those mechanics work, but I really liked the combat. It made turn-based combat quite quick and easy to understand, although some of the enemies were a bit lame. Now, having said that, on the flip side, the boss fights were pretty damn epic, and I enjoyed that it took some big storylines and then some really interesting side quests that were optional that you could go on when you were back in the real world. A good game, Mato Anomalies, and for £8.99, that's 75% off. Far and away the cheapest it's ever been. That sale goes on until October the 15th. It's pretty epic to be sponsored by Forever Entertainment with their latest release, Front Mission 2nd, which came out on October the 5th. We will have a full dedicated video of this one for you on Tuesday, and they've made quite a few tweaks and improvements for this version of the game, from massively increased load times over the original release to improvements to the visuals and a completely reorchestrated soundtrack. Now, it retails at $34.99 or your regional equivalent, but there is a 10% discount until October the 12th. There's also an owner's discount if you own certain titles. That takes it down to 15% and you'll be able to see that on the eShop, or there's up to 20% off if you own Front Mission First on Nintendo Switch. If you're not a digital buyer, you'll like the look of the physical edition. This is known as the unlimited version. It has a plastic case with the game cartridge, a reversible cover which depicts the different Wanzers on a battlefield on the outside, and emblems of the military units on the back. There's a lovely illustrated 16-page manual as well as a numbered certificate. This version has 9 different languages, the classic turn-based RPG combat you remember, and all that Wanzer customization. As I said, I'm sure there are lots of you that want to hear more about it. Check out our full video on Tuesday, and a thanks to those guys for sponsoring this episode. All the links will be down in the description and the top pinned comment. Dodgeball Academia was recommended to me by Glen, and I honestly thought he was bonkers. I was like, how on earth is a game about dodgeball going to be that fun? But he assured me it was worth checking out, and it turns out a game about dodgeball is that fun. You play as Otto, who's basically training to become the world's greatest dodgeball player, and it spans 8 different episodes where you'll make different friends, create rivals, and I really wasn't expecting like an RPG with the dodgeball overlaid over the top. It's brilliant. And then there's a cooperative play in there as well, and it manages to be a pretty sweet sports game whilst being a very good RPG. Sports Story has left the chat. Oh, what a tragedy that turned out to be. That one is on sale for $9.99, 50% off, absolute bargain until October the 15th. Hand of Fate 2 is one we've spoken about before, but it's 85% off now, which puts it down to £3.39. You've got a nice little mashup of 2 different genres here. You've got the card mechanics, and then you've got the real-time action ones, and they're fused together. So while it describes itself as a dungeon crawler, and that's where that hack and slash combat comes from, those cards will affect your play. So one card will be a certain place that you'll visit, as well as location that you might come across on your journey. There are lots of those times where you'll have instances like in your old choose your own adventure books, and you'll have to make a choice as well. Really good, very good game. Glen reviewed this for us, well worth checking out. Easily 30 to 50 hours of gameplay, and there's a load of DLCs as well. That sale for Hand of Fate 2 goes on until October the 15th. Whenever we do certain lists on the channel, there's always one name that pops up. Everyone's like, you didn't mention this, so I'm going to mention this. It's Into the Breach, which is 50% off at the moment, and it has to be said is a very compelling game. It's like a top-down strategy with turn-based combat, where you'll be building, customizing and upgrading mechs, but there's an unusual mechanic here so that when you die, you're sent back through time to try and save another timeline. Now, it might not sound that interesting on the surface of it, but it does everything so well that it's one of those that's very difficult to put down once you start. In fact, it's one that should come with some kind of health warning. Into the Breach at the moment is £5.69. That cheeky price is until October the 15th. Felseal Arbiter's Mark is 70% off. This is another that uses some tactical turn-based combat, but it has RPG elements. If you like the Mercenary series, you'll like this, things like Disgaea. But for me, Felseal Arbiters was a real hidden gem, really. Then there was another big expansion, I think, that came out. And throughout the adventure, there are lots of encounters that will have you making, well, I don't know if I can't even remember if it was choices or if it was just really difficult situations that it puts you in. What I do remember, though, is that there's like 20 different classes, and you're essentially building up your army as you go along with tons of different equipment bits that you find. And it's just a really coherent story, not something you can say for a lot of these tactical turn-based RPGs. For just over £7, definitely worth considering if you're a fan of the genre. I must mention Rogue Legacy 2 at its cheapest ever price, 35% off. Easily one of the most overlooked roguelites, probably in the last few years. So at the start of each run, you basically choose a new descendant. They'll have completely unique character types and traits. One of them will be massive, one of them will be really slow. One of them might even be a pacifist, and you'll get bonus points just for not doing anyone any damage and trying to survive. For each run, you'll get points or currency that you can then build up your castle, improve the town, and this will unlock new vendors and things, as well as abilities and classes. And there's even something you can unlock that will permanently fix the world in place so that it's not randomized if you want to go back and find certain things. So yeah, really very good game. It saw so many patches and revisits. It was already brilliant from the start, and it's one of those roguelites that has Metroidvania aspects in there as well, so you will get skills that will allow you to progress into the different biomes rather than being able to go everywhere just from the get-go. There's a new game plus in there that they added. It's just a ton of content really for £14, and that sale, like the others in this list, in the indie sale, goes on I should say, until October the 15th. I think the Serious Sam collection was a not very serious price when it released. It was something like 30 odd quid, and for, look, it's not that they're bad games, but no one's paying that. Like, you're not going to pay 30 quid for a subpar version, well, at least at launch they were, of some very old games. Now they're down to £9.44, which is definitely their cheapest so far. It's much more of an easy recommendation. So it gives you Serious Sam HD, the first encounter, including those screaming things that run at you. You can play all of that in co-op with 1 to 4 players. It also has online for up to 16 people. You've got Serious Sam HD, the second encounter, and also Serious Sam 3, although the third game does chug a little bit in certain locations. As soon as it went 3D, it was like, nah, I'm alright, thanks. This does have co-op as well, and in fact, this should have made our co-op list because it's brilliant in co-op. You're looking at around about 4 gigs, and that sale, like the others, goes on until October the 15th. From the creators of Duke Nukem comes Ion Fury, now down 70% to £5.99, and this, to all intents and purposes, is Duke Nukem with a different main protagonist. You play as Shelley Bombshell Harrison, and actually the voice of Duke, was it John St. John? He plays the villain in this, so you still get to hear his dulcet tones. It's got a cracking soundtrack, this one. I really did enjoy it. Easy to pick up and just go out and frag things to bits, and all for the measly price of £5.99. It might not be quite as iconic as Duke, but it is a very fun game. Then we've got a couple that I would class as, well, this one's a hidden gem, and then the next one, it's not a hidden gem, but it's all patched up, so it's worth talking about. So we've got Breath Edge, which is £6.74. I'm a big fan of survival games. I know Alex is as well from Switch Corner. We were chatting about this one at the time it came out. I think he put a full review of it. I played a chunk and then was like swamped and got swept away with something else. But it's essentially a survival game in space. You have a finite amount of oxygen to leave your craft and go and scavenge items, bring them back, and then figure out exactly how everything's working, fixing things up, decorating, and it's like an emergent story. So depending on how you deal with going out on those runs and the amount of stuff you get and what you unlock, that then unlocks more of the storyline. Or if you're like me, you completely fail for the first 3 or 4 hours, basically don't manage to unlock anything, and then realise you've been doing it all wrong. Yeah, it's good. It is a good game. It's just there's a lot of things out there that will try and kill you. so you have to be a lot more cautious than I was. It's just £6 at the moment. That sale goes on, you guessed it, October the 15th. So the game that is all patched up then, it's Cassette Beasts. This launched in a right sorry state. Like, it was really bad. Since then it's seen so many patches. Now it might not be perfect, but it really is worth adding to your collection at this price. It's £13.49, which is the cheapest it's ever been. It manages to make monster collecting fun again, I have to be honest. It's set in a remote island called New Wirral, filled with these weird creatures, and you can save them onto like tape cassettes, and that's how you launch them. They supposedly transform into them, but I know you're holding the red button down and saving them. Now this area is under attack by these beasts as well, and the inhabitants have finally decided to fight back, and that's where you come in, using those said monsters to battle against others and overcome. There was so much to love about the game, but the performance launch just messed us up. Now we do have a full review. If you want to go check that out, I guess just ignore the part about how it's pretty much broken. There are some cool little additions as well, like being able to use some of those monster abilities in your human form, but I don't want to completely spoil it. Go check out that review, and yeah, certainly one to add to your wish list. If not, it's just 811 megabytes and 13 squidaroonies. Then we have what is probably the largest buffet of Savaloys we've had in a while. Your Fett Kooks, your Savaloys, your Costco hot dogs, all of those good things. They are very cheap and very good games. First up, you've got Shovel Knight Spectre of Torment, which is 70% off, down to just £2.69. A cracking, old school, fast-paced platformer that manages to put a lot of modern ones to shame. You don't have to have played the other ones to enjoy this. I had a blast, and for that price, yeah, yes please. Then there's Valley, which is 90% off, down to £1.12. Now I wouldn't be picking up Valley personally at full price. It's a little wishy-washy, a little airy-fairy, but for just over £1, just moving around this world, enhancing your suit, using what is known as the power of Leaf. That's like L-E-A-F. You haven't got like a giant green surfboard, but this power basically now allows you to manipulate life and death, which is a fancy way of saying you're gonna like blast stuff, and then it's going to warp things and help you to solve the different puzzles of the world. It also lets you move really quickly and jump about a bit. It is a nice game. It was a little bit how do I say this nicely? Unpolished. Is that a way of saying it? Could have done with a little more polish. But for £1, yes please. Broken Sword 5, well that's an absolute no-brainer. It's down 80%. A brilliant point-and-click adventure. If you've not played it on other platforms, you can happily pick up at this one. You don't have to have played the other ones, but you really should have done. That's just £2.49. Full Metal Furies, man, this game's amazing. This is 80% off. You can play through it solo, and there's like a choice of where you go next on the main world map. But the combat is so quick, and there are like 4 different classes. I always like to play as the sniper, and you could like time your shots and do double damage and things. We played through this in co-op, and it was so much fun. For that price, oh man. I might actually go through this one, play with my daughter. She'd enjoy that. She's just about reached the skill level, I think, for this. Then there's the lovely adventure Eyes of Ara, which is 75% off. I was a big fan of games like Myst and Ryzen back in the day, and this kind of encapsulates that feeling. Just arriving on this island for the first time, and you get to the first door, and it's like, nah, you're not coming in. And you have to figure that out. It doesn't take long, but the fact that it's also all 3D rendered, it looks really good. Nice creepy atmosphere. Yeah, I enjoyed that. So the indie showcase this week then, an unusual one, but I think they have deserved it. It goes to Hello Games. Now obviously you might be like, they're not an indie, they make loads of money. They are an indie, very much so. And No Man's Sky has had like 966 million updates on Switch, and the latest one's added in a ton of new content. It's currently 50% off on sale as well, taking it down to a much more reasonable price. Well, I say more reasonable, it's reasonable anyway, the amount of content you've got. Still has a few crashes in the right scenarios, I have to be honest. But then there's The Last Campfire, which also comes from a subsidiary dev team, but still part of Hello Games, and that's down 80%. This is a lovely little old school adventure game, very emotional as well. Short, not too long at all, but tells a lovely little tale. So yeah, that's our indie spotlight. Please do support indie devs by buying some of the games on this list, using our code SwitchUp to get 10% off, so Nintendo give us about 0.5%. Nice one. Thanks to all of you that enjoy the content, to our Patreons, to our members, and as always, for all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya!